Hi, everybody. I'm Eliza Russell. I'm the education manager here at the NASCAR Hall of Fame. I am glad to be coming to you to talk about bridging STEM and engineering. Now, when you probably think about NASCAR, you think science. Yes, we go straight for the physical sciences, but there's a lot more to NASCAR. So the engineering side is really critical, and it's not just about the car. Everything is in engineering. So we're going to take a step. We're going to go start our engines and look at how can you incorporate NASCAR as a real life example into the classroom. Are we ready? So on the count of three, just like at the track, we're going to say start our engines. 1, 2, 3. Drivers, start your engines. Excellent. All right. So I'm going to share my screen because I want to be able to talk through a few items with you. And it just takes a half a second, which you guys know. Okay. So see me in a little box. We already have gotten our intro. Let's just set a scene for a second about the NASCAR Hall of Fame. So the first thing I'm going to let you guys know, obviously we're going to talk a little bit about the hall. The hall itself is not owned by NASCAR. Most people would assume that we are. We know Hall of Fame celebrate and honor individuals who have made significant contributions. They may be towards women's history. They may be towards a sport like NASCAR or basketball or football. But what makes our Hall of Fame interesting is we are the only Hall of Fame that is actually dedicated to a singular sport. So the Pro Football Hall of Fame is the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's not the NFL Hall of Fame or the National Football League Hall of Fame. Same thing with basketball. Same thing with baseball. So we focus on NASCAR. That makes us a little bit different. Country music, again, is not focused just on one particular thing. So with a focus on NASCAR, you might say, oh, you're a little bit tight. No, this is a lot of fun and excitement that we get everybody to understand not only the sport, but actually get to try the careers, begin to understand what actually goes on behind the scenes. And that's part of what we're going to cover today. You're going to have discovery here if you came to visit us, and we hope you do. Come and take one of our field trips. Come and take one of our virtual trips. We actually are doing a lot of virtual education. We can come into your classroom, take what we normally teach on site, bring it to you. Everything is hands-on. So our goal is to help you bring STEM into the classroom using NASCAR as a real-world application. So yes, you see cars. Yes, they get to drive here. Yes, they get to be part of the pit crew. Excuse me. They also get to see what does it mean to actually build a car? How do you actually understand how the engine works? How do we know that these are actually stock cars? So one of the things that we have is on our Vitmo site, and I've actually put the resource list where you can go on our Vitmo site and we'll take you on a virtual tour of the hall. 5 video presentations. That way you can pick and choose kind of what you might be interested in. So look at the Vitmo site. You would get a little bit of introduction to who NASCAR is and how it works. So yep, I'm your guide as you go through that. All right. So we need to stop and think about how am I building engineers within my classroom? First, we have to understand what NASCAR actually is. This is where kids can relate. So our goal is to provide personal connections and real-world application. They're taking the science and technology and engineering that you're teaching and seeing it through their eyes and point of reference as well as NASCAR. So NASCAR stands for the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing. So stop right there. First thing you're going to have kids understand is what a stock car is. Can you actually define what a stock car is? You see it on the screen. So You drive a stock car. Production cars come off the line. They are sent to the dealership where they are stocked, and then you purchase them like a grocery store. So we are stocking cars. It means the cars are very much similar. Nothing is different between them. They have not been modified. Great vocabulary word. So when we started, people were racing their personal cars, but they modified them. This is where things get crazy. You see the wheel behind me. Tires were not what they were modifying. What is the piece that they're going to modify? What is the purpose of the sport? Yeah, that's right. The purpose of the sport is to win with a car that is built to its best ability, has a driver who can drive very well, and that has the technology and the engineering to make it be fast. All of that STEM science, all of the math, all of the technology has to come in to get this race car. We no longer today go buy cars. Your point of reference to help the kids make a connection is the Cars movie. Doc Hudson in the first Cars movie, great clip to show, when he is racing around the dirt and trying to show Lightning that he can go fast. It was about skill, him understanding banking and gravity, him knowing how to turn and the application of Isaac Newton's laws of motion, and understanding how unbalanced forces work. That one scene captures all of that. But even better, the Hudson Hornet is a real car. It was one of the fastest car. In 1948 and through 1952, the drivers, the mechanics, and the engineers were able to get a Hudson Hornet to go from 50, that was how fast the street version can go, up to 178 mile an hour, all through engineering, trial, testing, trying to make it happen. So other piece to have as a good reference point for them to think about is just a tiny bit on the business side. So NASCAR sets the rules, guidance, helps us say what is the form of the racing. They own the numbers on the car. But race teams are the ones who have to build the cars into what the guidelines are. Now, NASCAR does not say every car has to be identical. There's wiggle room. There's engineering room. And the teams are always looking to figure out how can I change? How can I do better? What could be different? One of the big pieces, and I'm going to grab, is a piston. Your car has a piston. Every car has a piston. Race cars have pistons. Hence the piston cup in cars. This is the mechanics that are behind the race car. Without the piston moving and actually being able to move and transform the energy to get the car to move, cars will not work. They're always re-engineering this. This one part, every single year, they're trying to better it. So it's a great way for kids to think about how could one piece make such a difference? Design. We said we were stock cars. Have the kids think about from yourself. These are both Camaros. Compare and contrast. What are the differences between the cars? It's a great way for the kids to start coming up with that engineering question. We know that they need to start with asking. So start with a simple question. What is the differences between these two cars? Then, what are the things that are similar? You'd be surprised at what they're going to say. Yes, the number is going to be the first. You know it's a race car because it has a number on it. Correct. But go deeper. They're going to start pointing out they know one is sitting higher and one is sitting lower. You're now engineering. Why? You're just asking them the why. Why is a race car such more lower to the ground than a street car? Why does a race car not have a door? Why does a race car have a net Why is the driver getting in through the net? Why is the windshield different? Why is the tires different? You see the tire behind me. You'll notice that it is twice as wide as yours. Unless you have made some modifications to your car and you've gone with really expensive tires. Have the students even compare their bicycle tires to their parents' cars. What is alike? What is different? The funny thing is, a race car is closer to a bicycle in terms of how it actually functions than a regular car, because our cars are mostly front-wheel drive. A race car is rear-wheel drive, so the back end is driving. Guess what a kid's bike is? Rear-wheel drive. So now there's a physical point of reference for them. How do your brakes work? Kids know you push on the brakes. You have two pieces that come together. There's your friction. Friction is what slows the car down. Friction is what slows your bicycle down. Make the comparisons. Now they're engineering. You can say, how are you going to improve this? Again, go back to those why questions of what would they think about to re-engineer? This is exactly what's happening every single day. All right, so we have included in here so that you can actually get to have some videos that are great examples. So the previous video actually does show Chase Elliott getting into his car. So let's just look a little bit. This one also shows the impact of rain. We normally don't ride in the rain. What's important about this race that just happened in Charlotte is it rained very badly with the Xfinity race on Saturday. On Sunday, the track is still has a set of slick water on it, even though they try to dry it. Here is friction in action. So you can watch part of the race and have the kids analyze, where is this happening? You're going to see it very quickly. You see the rain coming up. You know the grip is not happening. So how are they going to re-engineer? You see the car is starting to slip. They have a windshield wiper. Normally we don't have windshield wipers. Again, they're getting live references for what you're teaching. So they can figure out the math. They can see how fast the cars are going. The nice thing about NASCAR is they give you all the data. You can know every lap which car is going faster, which car is going slower. Why? This is great high school. Why? What is happening? How's it slowing down? The Charlotte race is a great one to look at because we're racing on a street and doing corners that are regular that you would see here, but you're also at your banking. Here you go, talking about gravity. You're figuring out the math. What difference does the actual pitch of the track make? So that gives you a sense of how you can use these videos. They're all online. That is a nice thing. Nothing is hidden. It's not a sport that we hide anything. We also have a series that all of a sudden you can tie in what is the true role of a driver. So a driver is not an engineer, not their job. Their job is to drive, but they need to be in tune with their car so you can have the kids think about how are they using and how are they communicating back to their crew chief about what is happening to their vehicle. Last thing you want to do is run out of gas. This past race in Texas, that was a big concern. They kept talking about you need to save gas. You need to do other things. You need to slow down a little bit because if you run out of gas, you're not going to win the race. That has happened many times. So I'm featuring some of the women in the sport so you can actually learn about Natalie Decker. This for your high school students and middle school. She was 9 when she started racing. So you actually get to learn a little bit about Natalie. So this is in her words. All right. Engineering. So you're bringing engineering. All of a sudden you're starting to go, I have lots of resources, but you want to walk the kids through the process. So you want them to ask. So come up with a question. So if we want to improve the tires against the surface, what could we do? What could we improve about friction? We know the cars are unbalanced because they're racing at an angle. We know the left side has more pressure on it than the right side. So which of the wheels are falling off? Which is how they balance? We know you can't avoid Isaac Newton's objects in motion laws. How does that come into racing? It comes into racing a lot. What happens when they crash? Have them come up with questions. What could they re-engineer? They can even go way out of the box. The answer is in another 2 years, NASCAR is going out of the box with cars. Part of it's about money, and part of it is about design. So they're going to be changing things. A car is not a car. Your first car is not the car that you drove today. How has the car evolution changed? So come up with your questions. Then have them imagine. So even if you have to work virtually, this is a great workshops and things you can have them focus on. Work in those small groups. They can build, they can design, they can be. And I'm going to talk to you about found objects at your homes that they can use. So imagine the way outside the box thinking. So why do race cars sit lower? Right, because we are racing at high speeds. Cars sit up, air is flowing under the car. A race car goes between 140 to 200 miles an hour. A jet plane needs to be going 100 miles, between 100 and 120 to get lift, to get off the ground. So guess what was happening to race cars back in the 50s, 60s? They were flying. All of a sudden, bodies changing. They're sitting high off the ground. They needed to re-engineer and say, we got to get these cars down. That still didn't end it. So then Jack Roush, who owns cars, also flew planes. They're exchanging an engineering process to go, He said, well, we add flaps to planes to level out and control. Could we add flaps to a car to help it sit back down on the ground? Or you might look at the race seat. We don't race in the seats what we do. We actually build seats. You may have younger siblings. You may have children. You remember those car seats that you have to put harnesses on and so forth. They didn't come up with that. It actually came from racing. And it was drivers who came up with that engineering. The steering wheels have been re-engineered. That is more recent. They were solid steel, like what's in our car. They're racing. Object in motion is taking place. You're having a wreck. You're going to have somebody go into the wall. That steering wheel needs to be able to fold so you don't get hurt. So sometimes engineering is about desired outcomes in terms of going faster. Sometimes it's about safety improvement. Sometimes it's meeting whatever the greatest need is. So plan. Physically have them do a plan. Can be super simple. It doesn't have to be exact. It's about applying what you're teaching and having them try to demonstrate it. That's what engineering is. You've got to think outside the box and have a plan, but you got to test. We test all the time. We test in wind tunnels. They test individual parts. They're going to test every single piece of the car, and they're not going to let it go until everything's right. They're going to rethink, how do I do this? What's going to happen? And then they always improve and they share. This one usually shocks because we are a business. The answer is there is improvements that you're going to keep to yourself, but there's improvements you want to share because it's better for the entire sport. Same thing with any engineer. It's not about what I did. It's about how do we make this better? So we have a series of videos that take what you're teaching and apply it to the sport. So I'm just going to show a mini clip here.
Welcome to the NASCAR Hall of Fame's Spark Education. Today, we're discussing the importance of the engineering process. The process includes 6 steps: ask, imagine, plan, create, test, and improve. Whether it's upgrading part of a race car or designing a racetrack, this engineering process can be found in every aspect of NASCAR. For example, our NASCAR Hall of Fame race car. How can we make the car go faster? Through the engineering process, engineers can examine what improvements can be made for optimal performance. Let's look at two parts that have been re-engineered over the years. Look at the spoiler, located on the rear of the car. Around since the 1960s, the spoiler was invented in order to slow air rushing over the top of the car and force air downwards, adding downforce or weight to the rear tires, creating more grip. The taller the spoiler, the more downforce it generates, keeping the car stable in the turns. At the front of our car is
That just gives you a sample. So you can see how the engineering processes work. This is what you're teaching. This is engaging them. They're just doing it differently. So here's a thing that nobody realizes. If you ask children, and even the kids that might be on, if I pose one question, which is, you are riding your bicycle and you want to go faster, they're going to end up giving you 3 responses. So the first thing they're going to tell you is, I'm going to pedal faster. So when you're on a bicycle, you're the engine. You're going to give as much power as you can to that rear tire to drive you forward. But you only can give so much horsepower. We all max out. So then you ask them again, how can you go faster? So they're going to tell you gravity. They know gravity is going to pull them down. It's going to make them go faster. Correct. That is why our tracks are banked. We're increasing the gravity. Race car drivers have about 3.5 G's on their bodies for 3.5 hours, much more than astronauts. Astronauts have, from a duration standpoint, astronauts have more G's for a very short period of time. We have many G's, more than you'll have at a roller coaster. Roller coasters are about 1.5. We're 3.5. So they know the impact of gravity because they experience it. Then there's the last one. We came up with a wonderful word called aerodynamics. Ask a kid. They know aerodynamics from the beginning they got on the bicycle. They want to go faster. They're going to lean over just like a car and allow the air to travel up and over versus hitting them in their chest. So there's a whole engineering piece you can have them do. They can try to, with their bicycle, what else can they do to modify and change to make it go faster? Then with the math, they of course can go ahead and track and figure out speed. They can do all the different technology as well. Technology doesn't mean it has to be computers. It may be a different tool. So one of the tools we changed, we don't use oxygen in our tires. We use nitrogen. We don't use oxygen in the wrench that takes off the lug nuts. We use nitrogen. They re-engineered every tool they use to try to improve it. So that's just another example of what you can actually use. But what can you teach? You can teach friction. We can teach gravity. We just talked about that. Friction is not just the tires against the surface. Friction is the brakes. You can use the pictures. We have a great Google Drive, and you can use any of the pictures there. And there's some pictures that show bright red glowing rotors because they're using their brakes so much, they look like they're on fire. And they are, because we know friction creates heat. So you can do all of the pieces related to physical sciences, but you can get into literacy. Informational reading. How are you going to read? How are you going to think and engineer? You need to understand the vocabulary and terms. We provide you some of those. Everyday language is readapted based on the industry that you're going to use it in. Sound. Lots of sound in NASCAR. They wear earpieces because you can start measuring decibels. Great resource. Have them do an experiment. A lot of kids may have iPhones, or parents may have. Guess what there is for sound? There's an app for that. So they can measure decibels. They can do all the readings. You don't have to have the tool at school, because a lot of times it's been adapted into the apps. So they can use their computers, they can use their tablets, they can gather that data for you. Engineering. We've been talking about the whole time about engineering. All of this comes together. States of matter apply. Math is fine. You're getting art. Art is not just to be thought of as a separate subject, and it's not just visual arts. Art is actually part of racing engineering. Bet that blew your mind. So try an experiment. Paint. Take some paint, paint it on a wall, paint it on a piece of paper. When it dries, does it lay completely flat? Ah, all of a sudden you went, wait. So all of a sudden, that little bit of raise that happens with paint is now creating friction as the air is traveling over it. So they had to think, how do we reduce that drag on the car? All that engineering, those little minutiae, which we don't think about from an artist standpoint, impact racing. So again, states of matter. How many of you think about chemistry? Perfect example. How does an engine work? It's combustion. You can walk through the whole process of the energy transference. We have a great experiment that we can do with you, or you can do with the kids. It just need a bottle. Most of them are going to have bottles. You're going to need the cap. They're not going to just do the volcano experiment. They can actually re-engineer it, and we give them 3 options of how can I use lemon juice, lime juice, and vinegar, and which will propel a car further. So here's my thing, because you're taking this right after the election. Go capture all those election signs. They're going to end up in the trash. Don't buy plastic board. Go grab all those signs that are going to end up needing to be recycled or just thrown in trash. Reuse a lot of the pieces that you have at home. The goal is that you can make a tire out of a wheel out of most of anything. You're going to also help them understand how that's, you're going to hate this one, but you might remember the song, "The wheels on the bus go round and round." I'm pushing. The wheels do not go round and round. Your wheels on your car are bolted on. You have 5 lug nuts. This is a lug nut that's actually from a race car, but your car's tire is bolted on. So then what makes, another engineering side, what makes the wheel spin? So looking at the page, you got it. It's the wooden sticks. They are the axles. But the axle, if it's attached directly to the car body or the plastic board in this situation, will not allow that axle to spin because it's been physically attached. So the straws, they can think outside the box to engineer cars with simple household things, but have different purposes. Bottle caps become wheels. You can cut wheels from cardboard. You can get wheels from cups. You can make wheels from most anything. They just need to think differently about what is the purpose of what they're using. And that's where racing comes from. How do I use something differently to make it better? So one of the things we just wanted to help you with is we do provide sessions, so you're more than welcome to go online and you can see our catalog, again, in our resources. But we know that sometimes you're looking for what are those things they can do at home. So we do give you expound object experiments that you can find on our website. We did 10. They are not purely just about physical science. You can reach out to me and I am glad to help you. Think about how can I engineer with my students using NASCAR as a tool. Many options. Did you ever think about the weather? Everybody has to know about the weather. Weather's a huge impact on the sport of racing, not just because of how the precipitation. Think of elevation, think of how the air flow, because we have to have combustion engines. So you have air coming in. We know that the higher elevation you are, the thinner the air is. What's that going to do to your engine? Everything changes based on where we are. So I hope this has been helpful to have you begin to think about how to integrate engineering and building engineers into your classes. Contact us, do a virtual session with us help you. But a key thing is, if you want to get your CEU credits, please make sure you go on to the evaluation. So it's the bit.ly/K12eng/S11. Thank you guys. Thank you to everybody with your school district. This has been awesome. I hope I get to hear from you guys soon, and come and definitely visit us. Thank you.